Hi, my name is Jordan Smith. I am from McConnellsburg, Pennsylvania, and for my presentation, I wanted to do something kind of forestry related because before I came into Parks and Rec and transferred to NAU online, I got my associates in forest technology from Penn State. So, along with Parks and Recreation, I'm also really interested in forestry. So, sometimes I still like to kind of focus if I can turn any report or project into something forestry related to keep thinking about that kind of stuff. I like to try and do that. So, the title of my presentation in regards to my research paper is called Clear Cutting in Forestry, and my question was, will it be coming to an end? So just for starters, think about clear cutting in your mind and what you think of. You probably get like a negative thought about it. I think from a forestry background, I think of positive things and why clear cutting can be beneficial to our environment. So just to get your mind rolling here, just think about if we didn't clear cut anymore, where does your mind go? Like, what do you think about? Oh, if we don't clear cut anymore, that'll be great, we'll have more trees. But for me, I think about, oh, if we don't clear cut anymore, that's a forest management tactic that we won't have access to anymore, and so we won't get those benefits that clear cutting gives us. So just a little bit of a summary of my paper. Why I wanted to do research on clear cutting coming to an end, because I already see so many implications being put into practice about clear cutting because of our climate and the way our earth is going, with our carbon levels already being so high. When you clear cut mass acres of forest without any forest management objectives in mind, you are adding to those carbon levels. So that's why I think that possibly we might not be allowed to cut acres and acres of forest anymore, even if it is with our best management practices in mind. So, for people who don't know what clear cutting is, just an introduction. Clear cutting is when, if you're doing it like you should be, sustainably, you're going in with a thought, how it's going to benefit the forest, why you're doing it, and you're going in and clear cutting the whole land. You can do it as big as your prescription by your forest manager is calling for, or you can do it like a small scale clear cut and just do it like an acre or so. Clear cutting, like if you're doing it sustainably, it can be beneficial. There are many different types of species that benefit from clear cuts because they like big open areas where there's lots of light. Our Pennsylvania state bird is the ruffed grouse, and ruffed grouse really likes just big open areas to go out and hunt for food. They do well and they reproduce well in areas that are open, so they benefit from clear cutting. And that's just not the only species, there's a lot. Also, too, as far as tree species, oaks, they do very well in big open areas where there's a lot of light. So when you cut down all those trees, say you leave a couple oaks to regenerate, or you go back in personally and plant the oak trees as baby seedlings, they're going to grow and you're going to have such a nice, great forest in 20, 30 plus years because you clear cut that whole area. And not to mention, clear cutting, you as a forest manager are mimicking a big natural disaster. So it's kind of like if you know the area is going to catch on fire in 5 years, when you have no idea it's going to happen, you can go in and clear cut the whole area mimicking that, but you are in control of what's going to happen. Same as if there was a windstorm or if there's a bug infestation, or if you know all the trees are going to die anyways, you can be in control of that. And with having the best management goals in mind, you can go in and cut all those trees and take care of that issue before nature even has a chance to. And then you can replant with something that's going to do better, something that is resistant against those bugs, or trees that are stronger to withstand a windstorm. So clear cutting can mimic other things where you as the forest manager are in control. Now, clear cutting when it's not sustainable is an issue. Later I'll talk about the rainforest and how that type of clear cutting is an issue. When you go in and just slash all the trees with no goals in mind, and I'm talking mass acres of land, that is bad. Like, or if you're burning it, that's bad. All that carbon is just going up into the air. You're not replanting. You're not doing it to be in control. You're just doing it basically for money. That's not good. That's where clear cutting really gets a bad rep, because unfortunately, most of the time when private landowners are cutting their own land like that, that's unsustainable clear cutting, and that's what gets us a bad rep. Next, I'm going to move into the literature review part of my paper. I picked an article from the England Forestry Department because they have a really great system over there as far as their forests. And the article just talks about sustainability and, like I just said, about how you can clear cut sustainably. It also hits on other methods that I'm not going to touch on because it's way too confusing if you don't understand forestry, but it talks about other ways you can cut trees too, where it's okay, and in the end you're benefiting the forest. It talks about how felled trees are replaced, by nature. Even if you fell a tree, which means cutting it, fell means cut. If you cut the tree and it's just laying there on the ground and you're not moving it at all, it's going to regrow. It's going to stump sprout. You're not just cutting the tree, taking it for money, and then nothing's gonna happen. Like, nature fixes itself. So as forest managers, you have to know that, and you have to know what's gonna happen before you go in and cut, but it's okay to cut trees sometimes as long as you're doing it the right way. My second article took a more negative approach on clear cutting. It was based out of Oregon, here in the United States. And really what has happened there is they just keep clear cutting and clear cutting and clear cutting. And even though they're trying to have these goals in mind, their carbon levels just in Oregon have raised so much. I don't remember the years. I didn't write them down. But just in the last couple years, their carbon levels have raised so much. And then as a whole, that adds, to the world. So they have had to put implications for forest managers in Oregon, where they have to, basically line it up like, is it even okay to even cut any of these trees before they even go in and touch anything, because it's just so bad. I picked that one as my second article for my literature review just because the first one was kind of positive and talks about sustainable clear cutting, but then, here in the US, where we even have a really great forest management system, we have a state that is still adding to climate change and not really having the best cutting practices in mind. So it's just not good. My third article for my literature review was really, really interesting, and I think it's so cool to talk about. It's based on forestry in Alaska, and it talks about how, clear cutting isn't necessarily bad, but now we just look at cutting trees in a different way as people. It used to be back in the day, I'm talking like 50, 60 years ago, people would look at all kinds of trees and be like, wow, look at all that timber, like, look at all that money, like, let's knock those big oaks down and make some cash. Now, we're getting back, like, into, like, the 70s hippie vibes again, and people look at trees and are like, wow, those trees are so beautiful. I don't want to ever cut these trees down. So our minds as society are shifting. You go to Target, Dick's, any store like that, what kind of clothing are you seeing? It's all environmentally friendly. It's all save the trees, preserve, We have moved to this part in society where we care about trees a lot, and that's really, really great. But at the same time, now even sustainable clear cutting is getting a bad rep. So this article that I chose for my third part of my literature review from Alaska is how the Alaskan Forestry Department is really just trying to find, we'll clear cut, but we'll leave a couple trees, to throw seeds so it doesn't look that bad, so people don't hate the forestry department and think that they're terrible people. So I thought that was cool. I kind of chose a negative outlook, a positive outlook, and then like an in-between for my literature reviews. As far as current applications, I chose, excuse me, I'm getting over a little bit of a cold. I chose a study called oak clear cutting, to cut or not to cut. And it was based on this forestry class. They were looking at a stand of oak trees with their professor, and they went around and talked to all different types of people, loggers, private landowners, tree farmers, their local forestry departments, and gathered all kinds of information whether they would decide to clear cut the area or not clear cut the area. And I really like the study because it talks about all the different steps that forestry departments, especially here I know in PA because I work for our forestry department, where they have to look at different things before they just go in and cut. Like nobody here in Pennsylvania just walks into the woods for the forestry department and just starts slashing trees. That's not even reality. You have multiple different steps you have to go through to decide if the area is even okay to be touched with equipment first. So I think that application was really important to include in this paper and in this study. And then for my second current application, I wanted to touch on something that's a little more negative, a little more sad. Everybody knows the issue with the Amazon rainforest. It's bad. And it's not just going in and clear cutting all these acres of forest, burning all these acres of forest, and you're letting all that carbon into the air. It's also all the biodiversity that they are just killing. Okay? In the Amazon rainforest, you can have in just like 10 feet, you can have like 1 million different small ecosystems within that like 10 feet of bugs or of birds or of lizards or snakes. So when you go in and you're cutting millions of acres, you are destroying so much life. Not only are you adding to the carbon outputs, you are also destroying all of that life. So it's just such a big problem. And in countries like that, they have corrupt forestry departments. Here in the US, we are actually very lucky because our forestry departments aren't corrupt. They're not all about money. Yes, here in Pennsylvania, timber is our number one income, for those of you who don't know, but we practice conservation. So we go in, we get our timber income needs, we get our money needs from the forest, but we also have forestry management objectives in mind to where we are raising these forests forever and we are going to have healthy forests forever, but also meet our timber incomes. In places like where the Amazon rainforest exists, that's not a thing. All of these governments, all of the forestry departments are ran by corrupt government people, and all they care about is money. And a lot of it, they're cutting for large-scale farming to send goods to the US. So sometimes we're a part of the issue. But that was my second current application that I picked. It just talks about the Amazon rainforest and what's going on with that. So as far as future concerns, future issues, there's just major positives and major negatives to clear cutting, whether you're doing it sustainably or not sustainably. I think in the future, excuse me, in the future, I think there's going to be certain implications put in place more for us that have forestry management systems that are ran not corrupt. I think it's going to be more intense, the decision making process on clear cutting and how it's going to happen, whether you're allowed to do it or not. I think it's just going to be a more serious decision-making process. So as far as the future, I don't think that part's going to go away. But I do think in parts like the Amazon, eventually it's going to have to stop. That's just going to have to stop, or else we're really going to kill our planet. So I think that clear cutting will come to an end in places like that. But as far as here in the US right now, I don't think it's going to come to an end at all. if I had any recommendations to make, it's a little hard on the personal level. It just is one person to change such a big issue like this, even just climate change. But what I think you can do to help this situation is we need good, scientific, nature loving, environmentally friendly politicians in government, because even though this is not a political issue, it unfortunately seems to be. And I think that's the only way we're going to get anything changed, is to elect people who actually care about the environment. So my recommendation to anybody and just to myself is to go out and vote for the best green politician, and hope that they will get laws in place and work on our goods and exporting and importing processes, and also to get small scale farming on the rise. Like, all of those Amazon rainforests are getting cut for large scale farming. So if we can get small scale farming back on the rise, start growing our own food, all of those forests will be less likely to be cut. So I think that's a good thing. But this is basically just the end of my presentation. No, I do not think clear cutting is going to come to an end. Maybe in the Amazon rainforest, but not so much here. And I just really want to thank everybody for listening, and sorry for my rambles, but I think trees are important, and it's up to us as a human race to save them. So